G'day everybody, how you going today? It is so good to see you. I do hope that you are super well. Yes, we're here for the fourth major update for the Z9 firmware 5.00. Now I don't actually have this firmware, so I've not been able to test it yet, but as of you watching this, the firmware is available for download right now, and we can all get to play with it. But I do have a full outline of what we're going to find in this firmware. Let's get into it. We've got updates to auto capture, we've got the addition of skin softening and rich tone portrait, and a whole range of usability tweaks and updates that have been asked for by us. And of course, this follows on super nicely to the interview that we had with Photo Trend magazine, talking about the fact that firmware updates, now we get to this point, firmware update number 5 for the Z9, major update. There's been a whole lot of little tweaks as well, some that included major birding focus improvements like 4.1. Nikon is now on a path of very much listening to users' needs, along with, I'm sure, they're going to bring new advancements as well. Anyway, let's get into what this one's about. Now, I think for sports photographers and wildlife photographers, there might be some other usages for this, perhaps spy agencies, law enforcement, and others. Who knows? But auto capture, which was designed to be on and then look for a specific set of circumstances, whether it was movement or detecting a face or whatever, it can now be set to a window in time. So rather than it just being on forever, or as long as power can get to the camera, now you can actually tell it to say, I want to do it between 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. or 12 p.m. and 1 a.m. You can set the time. And I think that's really useful if you're, for example, talking about sporting events that are only going to run in a very specific window. Also added to auto capture, like with the Z8, is the functionality to shoot auto capture in APS-C/DX mode. When it comes to this timed auto capture advancement, it might mean that you're putting a camera up the top of a tower or a church spire or in the rafters of a sporting arena, and you don't need the camera to be auto capturing from then on. It may well be that you have to place that camera 2 hours or 5 hours before the big game actually starts. And what this helps with, it helps with saving batteries. Also, to help the sports photographer, a new addition that I think is only in the Z9 at this point in time is in high frequency flicker reduction. You can now assign up to 4 presets in high flicker reduction for quick access. And a lower speed item, C15, has been added to the high speed frame capture plus. So it's giving you a slower option to run continuously at high speed. That is C15. When previously we had C30, C60 and C120. We now have C15. Don't have to go as fast. Let's slow things down. Next. And we now have added to the Z9 rich tone portrait control. This is another control which really assists in creating portraits. Just recently added to the Z8 in firmware 2.0, this allows for tweaking of the picture profile to give you portraits that you might be able to use just straight out of camera, rather than having to go to post and tweaking. This is a boon for someone who might be wanting to get out a lot of portraits quickly without having to do much or any editing. Along with picture control, we also have skin smoothing. This is a feature that came with the Z8 on launch, if my memory serves. And this is a feature that smooths skin in both video and in stills. Also another really useful addition when you are a portrait photographer or you're shooting video, as we are right now, and you just want to smooth things out a little. You maybe want to take 10 years off. Well, you can do it in camera. Now added to the Z9 firmware 5.00. I love those zeros, they're great. I mean, you could just say firmware 5, but it's 00. And it's something that I think is really cool. When you are shooting with an A10 Pro Photo light, you can set the Z9 to fire off the LED light on the Pro Photo and thus helping illuminate for AF assistance. That's really cool. You do have to update the firmware of your A10 Pro Photo for that to work. And I really do hope that sort of functionality comes to all Pro Photo lights. I have a couple, along with any other brand that's possible with. A super useful feature for portrait photographers with Pro Photo. And we also have the addition now of prefer focus point face priority. So when you are looking at images, you're playing back images of faces and you are zoomed in, it will automatically find that part of the image. It will prefer that. Again, really useful for portrait photographers when you're flying through a session and you just want to see, did you get critical focus? Did you get the right expression? Did they blink? Any of the above and more.
And we now have 4 separate custom setting banks for stills and 4 for video. And that is now giving you 8 custom setting banks.
So as we saw with the Z8, you can now change the thickness of the AF box so you can see it more in difficult lighting situations. That too now has arrived with the Z9. And this might be useful to some people, but you can now manually focus when your lens is at maximum aperture when you're in live view. Cool. You know, I never noticed you couldn't, but I'm really glad that I can now. Now, I'm not going to go through every single one because there are a few minor ones here, but I think another update which is going to be warmly received.
The focus mode button is also now customizable.
And I do not have the list of functions, but growing that is absolutely fantastic to hear. And ultimately, like I think it probably is a big programming job to get everything to talk to everything. And perhaps ultimately that's where Nikon might go. There's probably a few buttons that may not get assigned because they've got to be left to do their primary role, perhaps like the shutter button. You never know how many buttons may well become customizable, but this is a feature that has been asked for from the community and fantastic to see it arriving here. And we have loop playback, wait before playback, and auto series playback speed. These options have been added for playback of a series of images captured with a burst of continuous shooting. And in the I menu, we can now set the speed of playback of video for the original speed, half speed, or quarter speed. In Wi-Fi station mode, the camera can now connect to Snapbridge without taking over your whole Wi-Fi connection of your smartphone. So I think what this ultimately means is that you can still be connected to Wi-Fi for your phone and the camera can be connected to your phone as well. So you can keep using Wi-Fi. And that's a great feature from my perspective because there's so many devices that we have to connect to these days. That's cool. And finally, one that I'm really excited about is when using the MC-N10 remote grip for video that can now be connected to perhaps not all of the Z cameras, but many of them. If you were to use the Bluetooth sync here, so this is a Bluetooth timecode syncing device, which would allow you to sync ZF, Z8 and Z9, and they can run off the timecode that this generates. But when you did that, you couldn't use the MC-N10 and vice versa. This has now been fixed. Awesome. We can use them both together. This is absolutely fantastic for video makers who want to use the MC-N10, but also want to use the Bluetooth timecode sync. This is something that was raised, I think it's something like 18 months ago, and it's absolutely fantastic to see Nikon address this, as I thought they would, and now we get the best of both worlds, as it should be. All right, well that is the majority of firmware updates in firmware 5.0 for the Z9. Love to know your thoughts about it in the comments below. Who knows what the future holds? All right, it's been so good to see you. I'd love to know your thoughts about all this firmware and more. Let me know what you're thinking about Red and Nikon. So much going on in the Nikon space at the moment. I can't really believe it. It's been so good to see you. If this is your first time here, I would love to see you again, so please do subscribe, please share, and please like. All right, bye for now.